Hey look, it's the mom. I hope they don't do something cliched and annoying like give her amnesia.
Who took you?
I didn't tell you yet? I can't remember.
Of course they did. So the good news is we get more of the mystery element with these episodes. Unfortunately, it's not very much, and it doesn't really answer a lot of questions. And we're still focusing more on the teen melodrama and Velma's boring love life, along with some weird and confusing social commentary. They also make fun of Scooby-Doo more.
You going from Daphne to Velma is worse than going from a beloved cartoon to a playful reimagining.
Right.
According to the show's creators, they didn't have any pushback from Warner Brothers when they were developing the show, which is pretty disappointing to see. I really don't think this will reflect well on the franchise, even if Velma is in another universe. But Warner Brothers has been pretty notorious for mishandling the IPs they own. Anyway, the story picks up with Velma trying to discover the significance of the word jinkies. She again obsesses over it to the point where she neglects everybody else, including Daphne, who's been trying to get her attention. You'd think Daphne would have figured out by now that Velma's just not a good friend, and try to find somebody else who would be more supportive. I'm pretty sure Olive, the blonde girl, would be a better confidant than Velma at this point. She could at least try Norville and Gigi. The town is putting on their annual fog festival, where they celebrate this spooky fog that rolls in that seems to have strange properties, like walking into the fog can cause you to teleport to a different location, or even change people's clothes, which seems pretty concerning, but everyone seems to see it as very whimsical and charming. They're also getting rid of the curfew. Apparently Mrs. Rogers went to the press and told them everything about her mad scientist mother, so the town is writing off the murders as the result of a ghost attacking, and since curfew can't stop a ghost, they're just doing whatever they want. Velma's not happy about this, but they explain they're not totally ignoring the serial killer, and all the girls had to go with a date to protect them. However, Velma couldn't get a date because Norville asks Gigi, and Fred has to ask Daphne, because his parents want him to be crowned the Fog King, otherwise they'll basically disown him, and they don't think he can win with Velma. Throughout the episode, when they say Fog King, they make sure to say it fast so it sounds like the F-bomb, and they make sure to say it over and over again because it was so funny the first time. So Velma's stuck at home for the night. She tries reaching out to Daphne before she leaves, since the two of them are neighbors, but Daphne purposely blanks her, hoping to give her a taste of her own medicine, which she honestly deserves. Anyway, Velma's mother was a mystery novelist, and while looking through her old manuscripts, she discovers that Jinkies is a reference to one of her stories, Detective Dia Jinkies. Also, Dia was the name of Velma's mom, so these are all just self-insert stories where she casts herself as the hero. At least they're original stories instead of, say, taking a random IP from the past that was beloved and forcing yourself into it like some other people we know. Anyway, she reads the manuscript and discovers a clue. When she heats up the paper she found, it reveals a phone number. She calls the number and the killer actually answers, which I wasn't expecting, but based on the background noise she's able to deduce that he's at Fogfest. So she decides to go to Fogfest without a date, but since she can't get in as a woman, she disguises herself as a man. So she calls herself Manny, the man, and goes to Fogfest where she discovers that everybody is completely taken with her. Everybody is nice to her and respects her, listens to her, and all the women want to be with her. I'm not entirely sure why though, she basically just looks like a shorter version of her father, but there's one point where she falls into a dumpster and is rolling around in garbage, but Daphne sees this and is immediately taken with her. Weird turn on. Basically, Velma discovers that her worst qualities as a girl are considered positive as a boy, whether it's physical or her mannerisms, and men just overall have it easier and better. Like apparently there's no pressure to wash your hands as a man.
What? You gonna wash your hands? No, 'cause I'm evil.
But I guess it's not surprising Velma wouldn't mind not washing her hands considering the fact that she eats out of garbage cans. Seriously though, wash your hands. But this becomes the episode. She spends most of the time just running around as a man and having a great time. Never mind that there's a serial killer on the loose, but Velma just assumes that she scared him off. After all, he's not answering his phone anymore, so that definitely means he's no longer at the festival, apparently. I find it pretty hard to believe that she could just cross-dress and automatically be adored. I can't pretend to know the male experience, but considering the fact that they tend to top lists like highest unaliving rates and homelessness, it just seems like this is a lot. It'd probably be more realistic if everyone just ignored her, but I guess comedies do rely on exaggeration, don't they? It would help if any of this was actually funny though. Meanwhile, Norville's trying to make it up to Gigi for ignoring her to the point where she almost died, by winning them Fog King and Queen. However, it becomes pretty obvious that Norville's not actually doing this for Gigi, but is instead acting on his own insecurities, thanks to the way Velma treated him. He becomes extremely competitive and more desperate to win as the night goes on. He gets into a fist fight with Fred over it, and also ignores Gigi. He even hatches a plan to push Gigi off the pier so he can save her and make himself look like a hero. She obviously refuses, so he ends up pushing a random girl off the pier, just so he can win the crown. Yeah, Norville doesn't come out looking great this episode. It's also pretty obvious that he's still hung up on Velma, so I can't blame Gigi for eventually walking away. He goes after her to give her the Fog Queen crown, but she explains that she doesn't want it and calls him out for his behavior. He acknowledges that he hasn't been fair to her, but she takes him back.
You're weird, sure, but you're also sweet and amazing and deserve to be treated well.
He also reeks of desperation and insecurities, but I guess he can try to work through that. I still think she could do better though. Anyway, Fred takes the crown out of the garbage so he can actually go home tonight, which would be great, except he ends up getting kidnapped by the murderer. Yeah, it turns out Velma didn't scare him away, and there ends up being an elongated Scooby-Doo-like chase sequence where they make sure to take a bunch of jabs at the source material. But also, why would he kidnap Fred? All the victims so far have been girls, so what would he want with a guy like Fred? Fred ends up waking up in an underground bunker and discovers the brains of the 3 murdered victims, so they are technically still alive, just being used for some weird human experimentation. So this is a pretty major reveal. Unfortunately, they don't do anything interesting with it. Like, Fred could be looking around the bunker finding clues, or asking the girls what's going on or what they know, trying to put the pieces together, like what's the connection between them and the crystal mines, where some of their stuff was discovered. Instead, we get a lot of weird sex jokes, where it's implied that Fred has a relationship with all of them, even though they're just brains in a jar. One of them has a pregnancy scare. I don't get it. Then again, I don't know what this show is talking about half of the time, but seriously, we finally get something with the mystery, and they just don't do anything with it. At this point, I'd be willing to sit through an exposition dump. Who cares about this teenage melodrama nonsense? People's brains have been removed, and we don't know why. We also don't get any information about Daphne's biological mother, who was also kidnapped by the serial killer. I wonder why she isn't down here too, regardless of whether her brain was removed or not. Where is she? Them bungling this mystery is making me lose interest in it, even though it was the only interesting part of the show. Most of the episode involves time skipping and flashbacks, not of the girls who had their brains removed. That would have made too much sense. But instead of how Velma, Daphne, Norville, and Gigi got trapped in a ravine, it's largely a big waste of time, much like the rest of this show. But they flash back to the Fog Fest again. Due to the Fog shenanigans, Fred was able to get the killer's phone, so Velma and Daphne work to hack into it. I honestly don't get a lot of the jokes in this show, like when Velma's trying to guess the passcode to the phone.
Okay, Daphne, if you were a serial killer, what would your password be? I've tried mustache fan, I took the red pill, and van owner.
But it's a 4-digit passcode. It just seems forced. Anyway, they managed to hack the phone, and the passcode is just 1234. There isn't much on the phone aside from a picture of the forest outside of town. Apparently, their founder was Billy Crystal, I guess because they live in Crystal Cove. Velma wants to go check it out, but Daphne already had plans to work on a project with Olive. So Velma fakes a hallucination to force Daphne to work with her by guilting her into thinking she's going to die. She is such a toxic person. So Daphne caves and goes with her. We also get a flashback of Velma and Daphne's history, proving that Velma has always been toxic and possessive, like forcing Daphne to only hang out with her, even at her own birthday party, and stealing the cake from her mom's. Daphne has abandonment issues due to being adopted, and admits that she likes when Velma is possessive because it makes her feel wanted, which is pretty tragic. This is not healthy, and she needs help. I guess Norville's dad isn't actually cutting it. Speaking of Norville, the only reason why he and Velma are friends is because Daphne started hanging out with the popular girls, so Velma needed somebody to control.
Let's go, Daph.
I'm Norville.
You are who I say you are.
which is also very tragic. They all need help. Gigi really wants to sleep with Norville, but he can't seem to take a hint. She keeps saying that her family has a cabin in the woods that they can have privacy at, but apparently because she didn't specifically say for sex, he just doesn't get it. So he invites Daphne and Velma so they can use the cabin as a base while they look for the killer, which leads to a very awkward situation. Gigi's obviously very upset by this, but also because it turns out the killer is pretty close to her cabin, and her being one of the hottest girls in school puts her at risk. And then Norville says that Daphne and his own mother, who is the principal of the school, are hotter than Gigi.
How is it embarrassing to be considered the second hottest girl in school? Well, third if you throw in my mom.
Dump him! Dump him! Run! Gigi and Daphne go off on their own. Norville outed the fact that Velma is no longer suffering from hallucinations, and Daphne's understandably upset about her lying to her, but the two of them end up getting trapped on a cliff after the rock starts to give way. But Norville and Velma get jealous because they're holding each other, so they rush over, causing the cliff to give way, and they all get stuck at the bottom of the ravine. Wasn't that compelling? Definitely worth skipping over the actual murder mystery. And then they are stuck under this rock for a while. They almost get rescued because Norville has a homing device, but then Fred is reported missing, and they ditch them to go find Fred because he comes from a rich white family, and that takes priority, because of course it does. So that whole scene ends up being a waste of screen time. Anyway, they all blame each other for what happened, and start scooting the rock around because one of them can get out, but they would probably crush one of them in the process, and they're fighting over who gets crushed, and it's all just boring. I genuinely don't care about any of this. But then the rock ends up giving way again, and then they fall deeper into the ravine, and realistically they probably would have all died from this, but of course they're fine. But Gigi's had the last straw when Norville protects Velma instead of her, so the two of them leave to work out their issues, while Velma and Daphne explore the caves, but it's really just an excuse to get them to talk about their own relationship, which I could not care less about. They decide their friendship just isn't working out, so they decide to be girlfriends. No. If they already have problems with each other, dating is not going to solve those problems. It's probably gonna make things worse. Plus all the toxicity. But they aren't actually able to come to any conclusion because they hear Fred in the bunker. Seriously though, I don't want Velma to end up with anybody. So they go to the bunker and Fred runs off because he's been stuck there for 2 days. I'm not sure why the killer didn't show up in all that time. He screams a lot about how he's free, which causes the cave to collapse and he's forced to go back to the bunker. So now they have to escape while the cave is collapsing. Velma wants to save the brains, which is actually pretty nice coming from her. I wouldn't have expected that, but she has to jump over the small crack in the rock, and it's all very dramatic due to her lack of athleticism. She almost does fall, but she's rescued by none other than her mother. Not sure where she's been hiding this whole time, but she's finally here after 8 episodes of build-up, but it's still pretty weird. Fred's been stuck here for 2 days. Where the heck has she been? Unless she is the murderer, which she might be. Anyway, there's an extended scene where they have to escape the cave. Also, I think the brains might have died when the cave was collapsing and they got struck with rubble. They stopped talking after that, and Fred says that they're starting to smell. Hopefully they managed to be okay. Anyway, Dia has a van hidden that no one noticed until just now, which is going to eventually become the mystery machine.
It's still here. Now get in this mystery jalopy.
But they use it to escape the cave. Fred gets all the credit because he's a white man, and Dia doesn't remember who kidnapped her. Honestly, these episodes just felt like a huge waste of time, which sucks because we finally had some major breakthroughs, but instead of getting to find out anything more about the Scooby program, we just got a bunch of weird and unfunny jokes, and a bunch of creepy behavior from Velma. I don't know if they're just purposely trying to make us dislike the characters, but they're really going hard. I still don't know what any of these people see in each other, other than Daphne having abandonment issues and is desperate for attention. But at the same time, you can't base any kind of relationship on that without being totally miserable. But I guess this show is pretty miserable, so I just hope they don't waste a bunch of time in the finale too. But the trailer for it didn't look promising. I guess we'll just have to see. But those are my thoughts on the episodes. What do you guys think? Do you care about the mystery anymore? I can't say I do, but let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to to our channel's members: Stutania, Tyrant Carnivore, Adam K, Shiny Orc Boy, The Rabbit Mancer, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Hussyman42, Nixel, Eric Griffin, Bill C, Taylor Ramirez, Caleb Nelson, Bandito Bane, Dakari the Professor, Equestron, Owen Wildish, Norman Sweetcream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Garcia, XV Legend, Hunter Rose, Dashhound, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Lil, Miranda Sinistra, Weebs Against Simping, Butcher7 Actual, and Kitsune Fiora. Thank you all so much for your support, and if you'd like to support the channel as a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this content, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.